Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. What is your childhood memory that you thought was normal but realized it was traumatic later in your life? When I was 11, my parents helped a battered wife out of an abusive situation. Her husband was a bad guy but was still roaming free. Nobody knew where he was. And he had made serious threats against my family. My mom ran me through the steps if he were to break in. I would get my younger siblings in the closet with me. She would run and draw him out and away from the house to a predetermined location in the backyard. Once they left, I would take the shotgun out of the closet and shoot him. I was groomed to kill a man at 11. Never had to, but totally prepared. My son's best friend came from an abusive home. Frequent hard drugs, probably meth, etc. Blood on the walls. The friend hid out for a few weeks with us. With the blessing of his dad and grandparents. We had to school my son on where to hide his best friend and siblings in case the mom showed up. He was maybe 7 or 8. Now 10. They're still best friends. And he still comes over all the time. It sucked to explain a bit of it to my son. But I love this kid too. Thank goodness the dad has custody now. When I was a kid, if I ever misbehaved even slightly, I would get a savage ass whooping. The only ducked up part that I thought at the time was that the beatings never varied depending on the severity of my misconduct. I bring home an vicious beating. I accidentally forget to take out the trash. Same beating. Never any variation. It wasn't until I was almost 15 that my mind was blown. I went over to a friend's house and shortly after arrival, his mom came in and started yelling at him because the school called. And he got caught trying to forge her signature for something. He did something that would have left me swollen and blue. And I was getting ready to just bail because I didn't want to see the incoming whooping. But after she was done yelling, she just hugged him and said she was more disappointed than angry and that they would need to work on things. I was like, what? Where's the ass whooping? Turns out, not every parent decides to beat the living shit out of a kid for every transgression. Big or small. Just mine. Edit. Obviously it was not just mine. I was being somewhat facetious. My condolences to all my fellow Redditors who have experienced similar things. We're not alone. We survived and we are stronger for it. As shitty as it may have been. I was really shocked by the fact the mother hugged him. My mom never beats me, I'm told now. I guess. She did a few times when I was little. She just yells and makes me feel really bad and then asks me 2 minutes later why I stopped telling her about my life and problems. When my mum was having a bad day, before I'd leave by myself for primary school, she would say if I'm not here when you get back. You know why, implying that she would kill herself because of her stressful life. During fits of rage my mom would threaten to drive off of the road off of bridges to kill herself. With us in the car with her. So scary to constantly worry that she would snap and actually do it. I feel for ya. My mom would do exactly that. Where she would speed and swerve dramatically. Why don't I just kill all of us right now? It got to the point where I was bored of her threats and genuinely couldn't wait for the day she'd finally drive us off a cliff. I found it more annoying than scary. She had her weird ways. When it was my weekend with my dad, I would be dropped off at people's houses and I thought it was fun because it was all so different and got to meet new people. When I got older I realized it was neglect and he was palming me off while he went elsewhere. My best friend's mom did that to her in elementary school. We'd hear a knock at the door and find her sitting on the porch with her bag. Her mom never told us she was coming. Just dumped her there for a few days so she could go off and do who knows what. I never understood at the time because I was just excited that was friend was staying at my house for a week. But no, I realize her mom just didn't want to take care of her. My big brother used to give me treats. M&Ms. Brownies. Cheese and bread. Only years later did I realize he was sneaking me food because we were not being fed. I am healthy and functional today because a 3-year-old stole food for me. A 3-year-old? Holy crap. It's amazing and sad what young children can learn when they have to. I hope you're both doing well now. I know how you feel. My mother didn't have food in the house when my brother and I were living with her. The fridge was only full when she had her boyfriends around. To this day I take my brother to go get food any chance I can. There's no way in hell I'm letting that little dude feel what being that hungry was like again. Holy crud guys. Didn't expect silver, row, and gold. One weird example was when my older brother and I asked for Digimon starter decks for Christmas. But my mom and her boyfriend only had money for one for my brother. I got some cheap squirt guns or something. My mama had to leave for whatever reason and I was pouting. My mom's boyfriend asked me what was wrong and I told him I didn't get a Digimon deck. He went over to my brother and asked him if that was true. My brother looked scared and said yes. All I remember is him hitting my brother all over and my brother screaming. Trying to crawl away while he dragged him by his legs from the living room into the kitchen, hitting him all over. Then I remember him throwing him an ice pack. It was normal cause we were beat all the time and it only seemed fair he should get beat real bad since he got the Digimon deck, but I didn't. Somehow this freaks me out more than a lot of the more extreme stuff on this thread. Since the mindset of punishing a kid for getting a toy is so messed up. Hope you and your brother are doing well these days and the boyfriend died in a fire. In my experience, logical people usually don't abuse children. That actually helped me as a child to realize that some abuse was actually abuse. Because the abuse was already normalized but the situations and justifications were illogical. My biggest example was that my mom shoved me through a door. Then slapped me because I broke my door. If it literally doesn't make sense, you can't claim that it is normal or excusable. My cousin's extremely religious mother would practice rapture drills with her. This consisted of her mom bursting into her room at like 3 AM, banging pots and pans together, and screaming, "It's the rapture. The rapture is happening. Will you be saved?" She would then make my cousin confess her sins to her and then tell her that she would be going to hell for her sins. It terrified her. But she thought that this was a normal thing that all families' mothers do until adulthood when she casually mentioned it in conversation and the whole room went silent. Her now husband had to explain to her that no, that is not normal. Growing up I walked around in constant fear of the rapture. As a little kid I knew I was too sinful to be saved. And was pretty terrified all day long. And a little guilty because heaven sounded awful to me. I thought it would just be an eternity long church service and sitting still that long hurt my back. But figured it would be better than hell and tormented by demons. I used to have plans in my head on how to get back to my house if we were out anywhere and everyone in the family got rapture except me. When I was an adult I realized that was absolutely insane. My mom used to give me enemas when I misbehaved. I didn't realize until I made a joke about it during my first semester of college and everyone looked at me in stunned silence that it was not a normal punishment. Edit. To my fellow friends who have been punished in similar ways, I love you. What the actual duck? First response and time to leave this thread. My mom leaving me at different places with different people for months at a time, or when we would be driving. I remember there would be times where she would tell me about the school she was going to take me to and that I would live there. I remember her describing the horses they had, lies, and how much I would love it. She never ended up taking me there but would always talk about it like it was some magical place. Found out from my uncle years later it was an orphanage. Only reason she didn't end up taking me is because he threatened to kill her if she did. It sounds ducked up to be taken to an orphanage, I know, but for the abuse some people take, echo this thread, for ref. It may be the correct course of action. It really wasn't back in the day as a lot of time orphanages had little oversight. Later, when orphanages were completely halted and foster homes became the thing, it was a similar situation. Had a friend who was in a total of 4 foster homes. And finally by his last one he got a good older couple who taught him good things for self-sufficiency. One of the homes was for only a few months. She was a librarian but for some reason couldn't keep him. 2 of the others were extremely abusive. I remember asking him how come he liked to read so much. Because he was always calling himself stupid and yet he read books which just didn't match up to me. And he told me his first home that was all he could do. He would sit in a closet and read. And if he came out of the closet he was beaten. Old me wants to go back and beat the shit out of the people who were supposed to be taking care of him. The second long-term home he had He had grown by then, and one of the ways he got that guy back was by setting his car on fire, totaling it out. I guess that guy then shuffled him back into the system. But he got the older couple who were farmers. He learned how to mend fences and dispatch animals for the freezer and garden. The older lady used to tell him stories about kids she fostered before and who were shuffled out of her home because the child services wanted to move them elsewhere. But this couple was kind and he did well. He could have turned into a really bad individual, but he is a kind person who saves kittens from the side of the road. And when I got sick, he brought me food every day for a week until I could care for myself. There truly is a special place in hell for people who don't treat children correctly. My friend overcame it. Mostly. But he still has nightmares. Being 16 and finding out that I was the only one of my peers in that class who was still being beaten by their parents regularly. The oldest anyone was the last time they were physically punished was 10 years younger than I was the night before, the last time I was beaten. My friend used to get punched by his dad. But as my friend got older, he got bigger and stronger too. One day he punched his dad back hard and apparently said something like, "Try me." I don't think he was ever punched again. My dad went to prison when I was 13. So I never quite got the chance to get big enough to defend myself properly. There was one time though. He was giving me shit. And it definitely wasn't near as bad as it was most of the time. But I was starting to get to that age where my anger was coming out uncontrollably. He made some comment about beating my ass because I was back talking. I punched him in the nose and broke it. Watching him tear up and blood come flowing out his nose was glorious. I savor that moment. That night was also the worst he ever beat me. I still have many scars from that night. Doesn't change the fact that I still would have done it regardless of how bad the repercussions were. Growing up, every summer we would pick apples at the local orchard. Lots of apples. Would keep some, but most just went to the orchard. I always thought it was just a fun time out. Would pick up apples, give them to dad to put in his picking bag. See how shiny you got one. Or throw the rotten ones around. 20 plus years later it finally occurred to me that it was a little weird, so I asked my dad about it. He looked straight at me and quietly said, "With 5 kids we needed the money. I would save my vacation at work and we would pick apples for the extra money. My parents worked their butts off to provide for us. Make enough money to pay for half of our university educations. And save for retirement. All the while making it fun. Not really traumatic but eye-opening for me. Huge respect for mom and dad." Edit. Thanks for the bling, anonymous people. After reading all of the other posts, it really makes me appreciate the things my parents did for us even more. If there is another occasion I will have to relay some more stories of him and my mom. Great people. Thank you all for sharing your own experiences in the comments. Stay strong and love your family. The one you are related to or the one you choose for yourself. An island of wholesome. In the sea of sadness. Thanks for your story. This is the most heartbreaking one I've read so far. I think this might be the most chilling experience I've read here. When I was in the 2nd grade, my older sister came into the bathroom while I was taking a bath to play with my toys with me. I didn't find out until later it was because my father was having a stroke from drinking too much and was making sure I didn't finish taking a bath before the paramedics arrived. My friend's uncle wanted me and my friend to model clothes for a catalog. I didn't go, but later discovered that store didn't and never had sold clothing. Turned out he was a pedophile and had been sexually abusing my friend for years. I think we were 8 or 9 at the time. My best friend at the time and I used to live in this small country town. Everybody knew everyone and it was quiet. Not much happening around town in a time of the year. One day my friend and I were walking up and down the street picking berries off trees when I had to wee, so I hurried home. 3 or 4 houses down from where we were was my home, and went about my business. I must have got distracted by my Barbies on the way back because about 20 minutes later my best friend came running back to my house. Her thighs covered in blood. Turned out that our neighbor those few houses up was a pedophile and tried raping her in his backyard. She was being too loud, so he covered her mouth, but she struggled her way out somehow from his grasp. Crawling down the driveway he caught her, shoved gravel up her vagina and let her go. I still remember my mum and her mum calling the police and looking like they had just witnessed a murder. My friend is doing fine now and lives a happy life after many years in therapy and has gone on to marry a very lovely man too. What happened to the neighbor? He ended up in jail. I think he did minimum time though and then moved a few towns over. Everybody put flyers up around of him and what he was. He eventually ended up back in jail for a similar event. I'm not sure what happened to him after that as we moved a state away. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.